Right. Welcome, everyone. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. Want to say appreciate you tuning in, especially on a Sunday night, folks. We have a good interview lined up today. We'll talk a little bit about what we've got going on the channel. Talk about my mission statement, what I am here to do. Bring you some good content, but also helpful content in your experience in the job market. And today we're going to talk about resume writing. Very important, great topic to get into tonight with everything going on. My name is Charles McNamara. You can find me on LinkedIn, pretty easy to find me, Charles McNamara, on other social media sites as well, but you can connect with me directly through LinkedIn. This video is live on YouTube. I know it's being broadcast on some of the other social media sites as well. So to be part of the fun interactive process, you got to follow me through YouTube on CM Fire and Life Safety. Tell you a little bit about my background, right? We're going to talk about resumes. We're going to be very professional. I do apologize. There is no tie tonight on a Sunday. We're going to take it nice and easy. Crazy to think I was writing these out like I was writing a resume, but I've been in my industry, security, fire, life safety, for about 20 years now. Long time. Criminal justice degree in security management. My expertise falls in security management, security guard training. I do a lot of other training as well with the fire department, FEMA, Red Cross, and all those other fun agencies as well. I want to thank you for tuning in, folks. Feel free, interact with the chat live. If you have questions, please post them. If you're live, we will definitely answer them. But if you're watching this later on, same thing, drop a comment. Myself or my guest, Ron, will get back to you. Today's topic, it's a good one. We're going to talk about resume writing and job coaches. The human element is what is needed today. A lot of things are automated through ATS systems. We're going to talk about why this is so important. Writing a really good resume for the job market. Good study. I want to talk a little bit about this on a really good article, HR Drive, Human Resources Drive. A study in 2019 came up that recruiters, on average, they take about 8 seconds to go through a resume. I just thinking about this. 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5. If we're playing football with 7 Mississippis, your resume is done and over with right now. So very important to have a good looking resume, properly formatted resume, with my guest from readresumes.com. Got to check them out. It's a great website. Folks, let's welcome Ron Reed, branding specialist, your job fighter, someone that you want to connect with. Really, really good guy. Graduated from St. Joseph's College. Great place.
Thank you.
I got a lot of friends that went there too. Hopefully you didn't meet any of those crazy guys.
The Brooklyn campus or the Long Island campus?
Brooklyn.
Oh, okay, I went to the Long Island campus in Patchogue.
Okay, good. Yeah, those guys are crazy. Ron, I want to thank you for popping in. Tell the people a little bit about yourself, what you do, the services that you provide, where you're from, all the good stuff about you.
Yeah, definitely. So Charlie, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, so my background. Well, first off, my company is readresumes.com. I am a certified professional resume writer. I specialize in resume writing, cover letter writing, and LinkedIn profile writing and optimization. I've had the business, I would say, around 7 or 8 years, but I've been running it on a full-time basis for around 4 or 5 years now. Started my career right out of college. I started at a recruiting agency right in Times Square. My first job out of college was literally just to review a very high volume of resumes coming in for the jobs that we were looking to fill. And I would pass along the resumes that I felt were qualified to my boss. And his job was to screen those candidates and connect them with our clients. Our clients were the hiring, the employer that was actually doing the hiring. Then from there, I moved on to a company where I worked on very high volume recruiting projects for employers throughout New York City. And Charlie, I mean, you can relate to this, but a lot of our clients were actually security guard firms. So I was filling a lot of those very high volume orders where employers were looking for 8 and 16 security guards. I actually was part of the team that opened up the Barclays Center back in, I think it
Nice.
was 2012, 2013. So I think it was 1,100 hires, 30,000 interviews over multiple months. I opened up a lot of the top new retailers that were coming into the city during that time period. That was sort of the tail end of the Bloomberg administration. So we opened up a couple of Whole Foods, a couple of other really big brand names. And then I just have some other experience working at traditional staffing agencies, sort of serving as a matchmaker between really qualified candidates and some really top employers looking for the best of the best.
Very nice. It's amazing to think. You know, I remember this is probably about a decade ago. I came across you through LinkedIn. Um, Very helpful, always helpful, providing information and advice on resumes. And I know that has changed a lot through the years. Previously, if you wanted a position, you would walk around, you see a sign, you drop off a resume, you fill out a paper application, and things were done pretty quickly, most of the time right on the spot. Sometimes, the clerk or the receptionist would say, give me your resume, and I'll pass it to human resources or the hiring manager. But that today this whole sector has changed a lot. You bring up the Barclays Center, where I live not too far from there, and I hang out in that area often.
Mm-hmm.
They have to hire thousands of people for different projects and different vendors, cleaning services, food services, security. So companies want to make sure that they get the right person. I know we're going to talk about this later, because one of the questions is geared around this. Is companies may be hiring, but they want to get the right person. But also, individuals seeking work want to make sure that they also find the right employer. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Folks, once again, Ron, great person you should know. Follow him on LinkedIn. You can check out his website, www.readresumes.com. So I got a couple of questions lined up. When I put this out there, I got some feedback right away. Some people sent me messages on LinkedIn. Some people sent them to me through Facebook. I was a really good turnout through Facebook. I was surprised. A lot of people wanted to know some certain things through some of the Facebook groups as well.
All right,
And
amazing.
some of the people on my YouTube page had a couple of questions. So I put the top 10 list together. Hopefully you can help us get through these today.
All right, looking forward to it.
This, I think, is probably the number one, right? What are we doing here, folks? COVID has changed the game. This can be a good time, if you were recently laid off, or if you're just assessing what you want to do with yourself. Maybe you'd like a career change. Now's the time to kind of pivot and do those things. But why is there a need for a job coach or a resume writer like you?
Interesting. It's such a great question. And my answer is probably going to surprise you. But what I tell people is you can probably get through life without a resume writer, right? Most people, they get through their careers, they don't hire a resume writer, right? And they get along just fine. What I tell my clients, though, or my prospects, is you never know about the opportunities that are passing you by. So what I mean by that is I think it's smart to partner with a professional resume writer like myself to make sure that you're capturing your story, your career, your value proposition, your areas of expertise. You want to make sure you're capturing that story on paper the best way possible, so that you're maximizing opportunity and you're not leaving opportunity on the table, right? Because the more opportunity you have, the more the more you have to choose from, the more leverage you have in a job search, and just you can lead a more fulfilling life. And again, just not to beat a dead horse, but you never know about the opportunities that never present themselves. And with a less than optimized resume, you may be missing out on opportunities that you are qualified for, but your resume is just not, hitting the right buttons, and it's not, capturing the attention of the right recruiters.
I thought about this from both an employer and an applicant standpoint, where you want to put your best foot forward. You want to be able to quickly explain what you have done, but why you bring value to be hired. I looked at some of my old resumes going through this. I wish I can share them with because it's hilarious. Security guard. Well, what did you do? Security. And then my next job, security guard. What did you do? I secured the premises. There was really no detail in there, and you kind of equate this to any other position. If you want to get fit, you can go to the gym, but a lot of times you get a personal trainer. If you're an artist, if you're a rapper, if you're a singer, sometimes you get a vocal coach. And I think that's the way people should kind of look at employment, right? You want to pair up with somebody who's going to put you on a good track to do the best that you can.
Yeah, that's such a great point. There's always that cliche saying that Tiger Woods has a swing coach. I mean, Tiger
Yeah.
Woods, greatest golfer potentially ever, he has a swing coach. I consider what I do, I'm a people marketer. I help people to adequately tell their story on paper. And it's very challenging to talk about yourself because you're just too in the weeds of your own life. Most of my clients are incredibly successful. They're great at what they do, but because they're just so involved in the day-to-day of their careers, they forget about some of their best accomplishments. They take some of their best skills and contributions for granted, either because they forget about them, they're too in the weeds of their own career. A lot of my clients are too humble.
Mhm.
So it's helpful to have somebody like myself to have a conversation and pull that information out of you, so that we can adequately market you on paper.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that also helps you as an applicant if you're not sure what questions are going to be asked. You can kind of give yourself a guided path on what you'd like to talk about if you're interviewed.
Yeah, that's a great question. A well-crafted resume will shape and guide the interview. A well-crafted resume creates interesting conversation. And interesting conversation ultimately leads to job offers. Interesting conversation creates a compelling candidate. It creates a certain level of sort of rapport, camaraderie.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, you're going to be hired by a human being, and there needs to be a certain level of rapport. And you made such a great point. A well-crafted resume can steer the conversation in a way that you want it to go, so that you speak confidently, create that rapport. And I do think that has an impact on increasing the likelihood that you'll receive a job offer at the end of the process.
Awesome. Great answers. This actually came up a couple of times, and this came up on LinkedIn. A couple of people, I don't want to say the person's name, but they were not sure when creating a resume, should individuals put their home address on a resume? Because they're not really hired yet, so they're not sure if they should give out some sensitive information like that.
That's a really great question. I do not include my client's home address on their resumes. I'll include the town or city and state and zip code.
Mhm.
But sort of common resume writing practice is to not include the number and the street address.
Makes sense. In my sector, in my field, especially, the security and military background, I always just think of, do they need this information as of yet? Who else is going to be looking at this information as well? Good answer. Good point. Another question that had come in: do you feel applicants should document and discuss gaps of employment? I know this is probably going to be something that everybody wants to know. How do you handle that? If I was terminated, if I was let go, maybe just had to take a break, I was going to school, I had childcare. What are some ways people should approach this topic?
Are you asking, should it be addressed on the resume?
On the resume.
That's a great question. I think there are certain circumstances where it actually makes sense to address it on the resume. And there's probably professional resume writers out there that would disagree with me. There's resume writers that would agree with me. It is sort of a hot topic of conversation in the resume writing world. I do think there are certain circumstances where it makes sense to address the elephant in the room, because if there's a gap in your resume that's for a very reasonable reason, I think it makes sense to address it, and to remove the worst case scenario from the recruiter's mind.
Sure.
right? So let me give you an example. Let's say there's a 5-year gap on your resume. Let's provide some context. Recruiters in general, they can be a little bit jaded. They've seen it all. They've been burned by people. People lie to them constantly. So they come across a resume with a 5-year gap. A lot of recruiters may default to sort of the extreme scenario in their head. 5-year gap. What happened? Was this person in jail? Were they on the run? Were they living in the mountains? Like, what was going on in these 5 years? When it very well could have just been that, I took time off to raise my children.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my spouse came down with cancer, and I was taking care of them in their last days.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So in a situation like that, it might make sense to very briefly, very succinctly address it, and then keep it moving on the resume. This way, you're sort of dispelling the worst case scenario in the recruiter's mind, because any company worth working for and any recruiter worth dealing with would have sympathy and understanding for those legitimate major gaps.
And I believe there's got to be a reason. And sometimes too, individuals might go on a military leave. They might be reserves or National Guard.
Yeah.
They're gone for periods of time, so there may be some gaps in employment. I deal a lot in that sector as well. I've also had individuals, same thing, where they've had their own health issues or family members as well that they need to take care of. So I think just having that on paper, just briefly, healthcare or military, just kind of helps guide that resume. Okay, this is what happened between these specific periods, and then in the interview, get into the nitty gritty, if you will.
Yeah, I'm sure in your field you see a lot of those military scenarios, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the times too that there were a couple of good points that came up when I posted this, where people would say, "Hey, Charlie, my resume says this," and at the bottom, the very, very bottom, military leave. I'm like, well, that's not a good way to put it, because most recruiters are going to go employer, employer, employer. They're going to be looking at that kind of in the top section and may not see it at the bottom. So
Yeah.
formatting, and it's one of the questions we're going to talk about that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Something even I want to know, what is the number? Is there a magic number that we need to know? How many employers, or how long should a resume be?
No, there's no magic number. My rule is, so first off, there's very few rules to resume writing. With the internet, there's so many articles out there, and as a job seeker, it can become very overwhelming because there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of contradictory articles, and as a job seeker, you're sort of like, your head's spinning. There's all these rules, but in reality, there's actually very few rules to resume writing. And in my opinion, there's not a rule around how many employers to list on a resume and how far back to go. My rule is you need to include information that will make you compelling to your next employer. So that means you need to include employers and job titles that are relevant to your next future job. And then, anything that's not relevant can either be removed from the resume or condensed dramatically.
Sure. I know I'm a big bullet point. So like, when I had my fancy title with my very first job that I became a supervisor, I probably had about 15 bullet points of, everything I did as a manager, where it really could have been condensed to like 2 or 3 lines.
Yeah. A lot of it's predicated on where you're at in your career and where you're looking to go next. And then, anything prior to that can be, to your point, can be dramatically condensed or potentially even removed. A resume is a living, breathing document. And as your career is progressing and evolving, your resume should evolve as well.
So do you think it would be a good idea for individuals to maybe kind of do a yearly or maybe semi-annual cleanup of their resume? Even if they're employed, do you think that's a good practice?
Oh, I think that's so smart. Because the world is crazy. You could get laid off tomorrow, or an amazing opportunity could come your way and you want to be ready to pounce. But also we're very, we get caught up in the day-to-day of our lives and our careers. So we forget our great accomplishments. So I think it's so smart to document your successes in the moment, whether it's directly on your resume or if you have a separate document, but document your successes and the new skills that you're picking up in the moment so that you can constantly update your resume and keep it fresh.
Would you recommend any specific format for resumes, like employer information on the top, maybe hobbies and interests in the middle, and references? Do you think references and their information should go on that?
So the way that I structure my resumes and the way that I order content is dictated by my client story and their employment goals. So for example, if I'm working with a very recent graduate, maybe my client's a 2020 or a 2021 college graduate, usually we're going to lead with their education, then go into professional experience or internships. And then maybe towards the bottom, we would have a section for computer skills or some other skills. If my client has, 5+ years experience, usually we're leading with sort of an intro section, sort of showcasing areas of expertise. Then we're going into professional experience. Then we're usually ending the document with education and technical skills. But again, there's very few rules to resume writing. So I do whatever's best for my individual client and their individual goals. Regarding your question about references, for most resumes, we do not include the references directly on the resume. It should be a separate document.
Got it. Makes sense. Kind of ties into the next one too about, technical resumes. I know today's day and age, a lot of tech savvy companies, tech savvy individuals, they like their video resumes. They like to get fancy, dress things up. What are your thoughts on video resumes for like the average applicant?
Yeah, there's a little bit of buzz out there, and to your point, there are some companies that are integrating video resumes into their hiring process. I wouldn't say by any means it's the norm, at least not yet. So I haven't had, I'll be honest with you, I haven't had any clients come to me asking about it. I'm constantly on job boards looking at open jobs, and very rarely do I see the company saying, go here to submit a video resume. So it's a real thing. Ask me this question in 2 or 3 years, maybe it'll be a bit more prevalent. But right now, it's kind of I guess we'll see if it's a fad or the start of a completely new direction in resumes.
I just think about it logistically, time wise. If I'm an employer or if you're an employer, and we post a job, if we had one job that we posted, we could probably get, in today's day and age, 1,000 people who will see it within that first day. A quarter of that, let's just say 250 people see it, and they start that application process. That takes time to kind of go through each resume, review that information. So that would also be a process. I think adding the video element to that would be logistically impossible for employers, for every position.
I think you're making such a great point. Because you made a point earlier, that on average, a recruiter on the first review, a recruiter's looking at a resume for the studies say usually 6 to 8 seconds, which sounds crazy, but a skilled recruiter can look at a resume in 6 to 8 seconds and figure out if you're at least in the ballpark for their position. Mm-hmm. You're a recruiter and you have to look at a video resume now. I mean, within 6 to 8 seconds, you could probably get a good sense of the person's personality and how they speak, but you can't tell anything about their background in 6 to 8 seconds. Yeah. So I think you're making a great point that I don't know from a efficiency perspective if video resumes is wise, are wise.
And you'd have to add on the technical issues of how do you first create it. Is it just going to be a regular video file? Is it going to be something hosted on their servers? Then how much storage do you need? That just could bring up a lot of additional hurdles, if you will.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, listen, I've been in sort of this world, the recruiting resume writing world. I've been in this world for around 15 years now, and since I entered this world in 2007, there's always been talks and rumors about the demise of the traditional resume. And people are still using them. So
Yeah, you need a good resume. You need a good job fighter. That's what Ron will do for you. He will fight. Another good thing too of having a resume writer and a job coach, you're kind of in the know. You know, you're shaking the hands of all of the players in the game, the companies that are out there. It's a good networking um, opportunity as well. So I can only find what I can find. You know, if I do a Google search, if I go to LinkedIn or Glassdoor or something like that, or Facebook, I'm only going to find, you know, those jobs. But having someone advocate for you, knowing the right people, knowing the employers, and also the requirements, very
mhm.
important as well. So, got
Yeah,
to have a
that's
guy
such a
like
great
you.
point. You know, I don't know what the percentage is. I've seen it recently, but I just don't know the exact percentage. But the percentage of jobs that are the percentage of available jobs that are posted to job boards and company websites is such a low percentage of the overall number of available jobs. You know, so to your point, you have to network. You need people advocating for you. You know, you need to know people that are sort of on the inside and know about. It's cliche, but they call it the hidden job market. These are the
Yeah.
available jobs that are not on Indeed and Hot Job, ZipRecruiter, and the ladders.
The Probably one of the important things too. I think I may talk about this later, but since we're on the topic, knowing what you want to do, whatever it is, you know, if you want to get into law enforcement, if you wanted to get into retail, hospitality, whatever you want to do, know the networks that are available to you as well. I think, you know, every industry has its little niche, whether it's tech, you know, there's hundreds of networks and different organizations, you know, and ask around, get to know other people as well, see what they do, what are their likes, what are their interests.
Mhm.
Most of the time it's a group of like-minded people, whatever position that you're in.
Yeah. So in your world, where should a younger security guard, who should they be talking to and hanging out with to find out about the opportunities and to grow their career?
A great topic. And you know, it's actually funny because I just posted something probably 20 minutes before we jumped on live today on Facebook. Someone who's looking just to get a position in security. I remember for me, when I first got out of the military, I have no idea how I landed in security. I think, you know, my parents were like, you better get a job, you better get out of the house. I literally picked up the newspaper and applied to everything that was in there. Security, there was a CVS, which I got hired for, which was
Wait, hold on a
a fun
second. You
time.
said you picked up the newspaper.
Oh, what's that, right?
Oh man, ancient history.
um, and literally just went, you know, through all of the jobs. And I think at that time, the classifieds, you know, it's funny that you think about it now, it was a whole big paper, which has been condensed to the internet now. I didn't have anybody really to reach out to. I just applied to every single thing that is on there. But to answer your question, where could people go? One, right, come to me. I'll definitely help you. And that's one of the purposes of me kind of putting this stuff together. But ask other security officers, just kind of observe, you know, what people do. Because a lot of times people, they have an idea of, all right, well, if I do this job, I get to kind of chill out and, you know, do this kind of thing. But meanwhile, you may have 15 other tasks that you have to do. So it's important to kind of ask questions. And there's also different types of security. You might have a front desk position where it's very forward facing. You're going to deal with 1,000 guests a day. Um, Another position would be in like the loading dock type of area where you're going to be dealing with trucks and drivers all day long, gathering license plate information, insurance. You might be an individual, and I would love to land this job. This is my goal for one of my next YouTubes: canines, walking the dogs with security. You know, so there's a lot of different fields within the field. So training is important. Obviously, you know, I do a lot of training as well. You want to make sure that you get the right training and expand it to what may help you down the road. You know, if you're just
Mhm.
looking for a job, ask 100 questions, ask people in the field, and then just kind of see what you really want to do down the road.
Cool.
Um, you know, there's other security as well. We could kind of talk about the 15 other different things. There's like cybersecurity, physical security, You have customer service, if you will, kind of like the concierge types, access control, card readers. Those are my favorite. The guys that tie into the card readers, the camera systems, to the locks and doors, has changed over the years tremendously. And then you have the fire side, the fire aspect of that as well. So security, we're trying to keep people out who don't belong, and the fire safety, we're trying to help people evacuate when there's an emergency. There's a lot of room to grow as well because it's a big field. I think the last time I checked with New York State, I think there was over 750,000 licensed security guards in New York State. That's not the 5 boroughs. That's just the entire state. But
wow, that's a wild number.
And this was something I looked into. This is probably 4 or 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure the number has gone up now. And to get into the field, it's not difficult, but you do have to have training. You've got to be fingerprinted, and you have to hold a valid license. Then annual training and annual training and annual training. Tips for online interviews. This came up as well. So if you hand in that resume and you get a call, what are 3 things you would recommend?
Great question. Online interviews were becoming more prevalent before COVID, and now in the world we're living in, online interviews are almost the norm. At least for a sort of a introductory interview, first round interview. But tips for online interviews, it might sound really obvious, but I've seen people bomb this. Make sure you're in a quiet room, no interruptions. Make sure the dog is not in the room. Make sure there's nothing crazy on the wall behind you. I've seen.
Like my Brooklyn artwork.
No, I love that. But yeah, I've seen people interviewing and like, in really disheveled bedrooms. There's like clothes hanging up everywhere. There's like crazy posters on the wall. So I know this sounds obvious to most of you, but I've seen it all. So just basic things like that. Make sure the room you're in is in order. And there's it's quiet.
It's so true. Actually, it's funny because now I'm just gonna like lean over little by little just so we can look at my Brooklyn artwork that a friend did. And the dog is actually laying right down here. It's a big fat bulldog.
Oh, nice.
It's funny because I would actually say those 3 things. Get to a nice quiet area where no one's gonna interrupt you because you want to keep your focus here. Sometimes, just like the doorbell ringing or your phone. That's what I tell people too. If you have an online interview, it's okay to have your phone near you, but put it face down. You don't want the screen popping up all the time. Take away those distractions. Think of it like a game or a show. You want to be in the zone. The room around you as well. I think I have done that myself as well, where you have shirts and stuff just kind of thrown behind you. Be presentable. And I think the last one, test your equipment. Beforehand.
I was going to say that also. Make sure, whether you're using a phone or a laptop, make sure it's fully charged. Make sure the audio's on point. There's nothing worse than going to start that interview and you're fumbling around and, the connection's broken up or the person can't hear you. It's just not a great first impression.
I think one additional thing I would note to everybody, listen, things happen, but it's how you respond. Like, plan for things to go wrong. It's how you respond to those. And if you lose connection, you should try and have an email or a phone number just in case something does go wrong.
Yeah, it's very smart. Very smart.
Next question I have, and this is kind of an important one, because I know you and I both deal with resumes and individuals who may have something technical or just... I was like this in the beginning. Whenever I would send in my resume, I would always send in my certifications, all of my licenses, like, hey, look at me and look at everything that I have done. What's your opinion on entering driver's license information or certifications, licenses, things of that nature?
I think it's huge, especially if you're in an occupation that where those licenses and certifications are sort of baseline requirements. Like I've been out of the security guard recruitment game for a while, but sort of that baseline requirement was must have an 8 and a 16, right, in New York State. So I think it would be wise on that resume to include that you have those licenses. If you're a truck driver, include the driver licenses that you have, CDL, whatever. For a lot of my clients, there's different sort of a lot of my marketing clients. They've taken classes or certifications, and a variety of things: social media marketing, Google AdWords, whatever the case is. Absolutely include those.
Got it.
There's no harm in including them, but there's massive upside to including those.
Should they attach copies of the certifications or just make a notation on the resume that they have them?
I would just make a notation on the resume.
Got it. Yeah, especially having some of those things like Google AdWords or the more technical things. I think that helps employers know what your capabilities are. I know AutoCAD. I deal with a lot of architectural firms, real estate firms. Like AutoCAD is very, very big in the industry. They want people to know how to read plans. I've had people send me their certifications.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell people, listen, it's okay that you have this stuff, put it on the resume, but don't send me your credentials. I've actually had individuals drop off. They would make a copy with their resume and leave copies of everything, like their driver's license, social security card, all the certifications. That's something I try to tell people not to do because you're not hired yet.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there.
In regards to resumes, this one was a big one on the Facebook groups. What tips would you give for an entry-level applicant, someone who's brand new to the job market? Has no work experience, their first job.
Get experience. And I know that sounds very obvious, and I'm not trying to come off like a smart aleck or anything, but get experience. The college degree is the new high school diploma. Mm-hmm. It's really not enough to just have a college degree and nothing else going on in your life. I work with a lot of recent college graduates, and almost across the board, my college graduates who don't have any internships or very minimal work experience, they didn't participate in any extracurriculars, they don't do volunteer work. I make them phenomenal resumes, but their job search is not as, they don't have an easy go of it, and they don't have as many options to pick from as my clients who are recent grads, who did internships, work jobs, were involved in extracurriculars on campus, maybe did volunteer work, gained certifications in certain things. So get experience. I don't care if you have to, volunteer your time, pick up an internship post-grad, just get your foot in the door somewhere, get a resume builder, get some real world experience on that resume. And then other than that, assuming you have a little bit of experience, own your job search, get aggressive, get proactive. I think a big mistake a lot of job seekers do, and I was guilty of this when I first graduated college, conducting a reactive job search. And what I mean by that is just sitting online all day, going on Indeed every morning, going on, the major job board, ZipRecruiter, and reacting to the jobs that are posted. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but if that's all you're doing, it's not the most effective way to job search. Something we said earlier was that most available jobs are not advertised that way. So take ownership of your job search, get proactive, connect with key players on LinkedIn, go to networking groups, introduce yourself. It takes a little bit of guts, but you got to put yourself out there so that you gain access to that vast majority of jobs that are not online.
Yeah, I totally agree. Volunteering seems to be like a lost thing from what I've seen. When I had no or very little experience, I tried to volunteer as much as I could. One of the things that I kind of just always wanted to do, I enjoyed the security, fire, life safety field. So I became a member of the Red Cross, and I just volunteered with them for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And during those days and nights, I became a CPR instructor just by hanging around. Like, hey, that's that guy Charlie. What's he doing? Nothing. Let's give him something to do. So I just got a little bit of experience through them, and I actually got my first real teaching certification through them. just by volunteering, just being there, being in the game.
Yeah, just a quick personal story. So I went to St. Joseph's College. My degree was in history. I played baseball at college, 4-year starter, and in hindsight, I have some regrets. But at the time, I was so devoted to baseball and school. I maintained a really solid GPA, and I also worked part time. That I just didn't do an internship, and that really hurt me in the job market. When I graduated college, I thought I was going to land at a museum or doing something in the world of history, history related. So while I was looking for my first real job, I volunteered at a Holocaust museum on Long Island, up in Glen Cove.
Okay.
Uh, Not paid, totally volunteer. I found it on my own. I literally just emailed them. I was like, I just graduated a history degree. Can I help out? So I would go there once or twice a week. And so long story short, my career obviously shifted away from history, but my first job was with that recruiting firm in Times Square. And my boss was a Jewish kid, probably 25 years old. But we had sports in common. He's a big sports fan. But on the interview, he asked me about the volunteer experience at the Holocaust Museum, and that obviously resonated with him for obvious reasons. But it's just so crazy, how I took this volunteer experience, and I know for a fact it helped me land that job in the recruiting world. And around 15 years later, I'm still in that world.
Nice. What position did you play?
What'd you like high school, shortstop. In college, I played second base.
Nice, very nice. It's funny, kind of something similar as well. I was into chess, and I got into my chess league, at school. So one of the employers, as I was searching around, it's like, "Oh, you play chess? I see it's on your resume. How good are you?" I'm like, I'm a novice. I play. I just have fun. I don't have a score. It's like, all right, let's play a game. If you beat me, I'll give you the job. But it was a good thing to have on the resume because it just helped continue a conversation. I had no business being at that job interview whatsoever. I didn't look at the requirements. I didn't care. I just was passing around that resume, but kind of helped me get my foot in the door to at least sit with the person and kind of pick their brain. He wiped the floor with me. He probably beat me in about 2.5 minutes, but it was a good conversation starter. So you're absolutely right. Getting experience, getting you in the right place that you need to be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously volunteering at a Holocaust museum has nothing to do with recruiting, but it was just something I could add to my resume that created a conversation on an interview with the recruiting agency that ultimately launched my career that I'm still, I'm to this day, I'm still sort of working in that world, recruiting, resume writing. I'm in that world still. So it's just wild. Just create opportunity, and you never know where it's going to go.
And we said this earlier, and it's about the human element at the end of the day. One of the questions that came up was, what are your thoughts on resume writing apps? I kind of know where I stand. Like they're nice, but what are your thoughts?
Well, as a resume writer, I want them all to go out of business and to go away. I want everybody to hire me, and I want to crush them. But I think if you need a great looking resume in a pinch, you could probably plug in your information to a resume writing app and get something presentable spit out, that you can present to an employer. What a resume writing app can't provide to you that a professional human resume writer like myself can provide is the human element, the ability to ask you questions about your background and your goals, and then create content that will sell you properly and market you properly on paper. Also, those resume writing apps, they're probably not going to catch grammatical errors, misspellings, misplaced punctuation, any other errors of that nature. So, yeah, again, if you're in a pinch, they can probably get the job done to a certain extent, but I don't advise them. I wouldn't advise relying on them for your resume.
And I think it's it's quick, it's easy. You can have something on the phone. So if you ran into somebody, hey, here's my resume, but I think that's one of the problems is we're so quick to try to get things done. A lot of times we communicate to speak instead of just to listen. So we're
Mhm.
very, very quick. So I always like to have that time to just kind of review things and make sure it's done correctly the first time instead of done quickly. I don't need it quickly. I need it done correctly.
Right.
So it's kind of good just to have on the go, give you placeholders, but at the end of the day, you want someone to kind of look over your resume before sending it out.
Yeah, and you really want to put your best foot forward. I mean, like I said earlier, you never know about the opportunities that aren't presenting themselves because you're not putting forth you're not putting your best foot forward. You're not putting forth the highest quality resume possible. So,
Kind of brings me to the next question. What do you think are some fatal job applicants make on their resume? I totally agree. Grammatical errors, probably
um,
one of the big ones.
yeah, grammatical errors, spelling errors can be fatal. I think a lot of it depends on the type of job you're applying to, right? So, for example, if you're applying to be an English teacher, a spelling error is going to be far more fatal than if you're applying to be a mechanic, a janitor. Not that there's anything wrong with those jobs, but your ability to spell is just not as valued, compared to if you were applying to be an English teacher. But yeah, one of my rules is landing a job is hard enough on its own. So don't give the recruiter anything to hold against you. Right.
Yeah.
So in this day and age, whether you're applying to be a janitor or an English teacher, there's really no reason to have spelling errors in your resume between spell check and the Grammarly apps. And just
Mhm.
I also just advise having 2 or 3 trusted human beings review your resume as well to catch anything that might fall through the cracks. But yeah, spelling errors, definitely avoid those. Um, Job applicant mistakes.
Yeah, I kind of want to jump in one.
Yeah,
Um,
please. Yeah.
I've learned this over the years. So just the best way to elaborate on your successes. You talked about this earlier. Highlighting your stories. I think individuals sometimes forget to do that. They outstanding attendance, or they've received some type of customer service award recognized by their employers. I think that's so important, and just to kind of reiterate that you should definitely put those things on your resume.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal point. That is the reason people should hire me or another professional resume writer, because most people, like we said earlier, they're either too humble or they're too caught in the weeds of their own career. But most people sell themselves short on their resume. The most compelling resumes highlight accomplishments and impact and the value that you bring to your employers. Most people, their resumes are just a laundry list of tasks.
Hmm.
The most compelling resumes talk about tasks, but also attach outcomes to those tasks. So instead of saying I do a compelling resume would say I do A, which results in B, C, and D.
Correct. Yeah. I've been able to implement this policy, which saved my employer thousands of dollars, or in addition to um, if I put this policy in place, it provided X amount to my employer. So you got to be able to articulate, which I'm having a hard time doing all of a sudden. It makes me so nervous, Ron. Uh,
No, but
Updating my resume.
you're on the money. You're exactly on the money. And when you can quantify those outcomes, it's even more compelling,
Hmm.
right? So a very poor bullet point would say something like, "I organize files," right? A better bullet point would say something like, "I organize files which streamlined office operations." A really compelling bullet point would say, I organize files, streamlining office operations, and driving down waste by 18% year over year.
Yep.
Right? So the task is organizing files. I make the office more efficient, and you're actually you're quantifying the efficiency that you've brought to the table, or the elimination of
I,
wasted
I've
time.
I've been in the compliance field as well. Compliance is compliance, right? You have to do this audit in this time, but quantifying why it's so important. It may take if we're doing a snapshot of record keeping, let's say, because I
Mhm.
deal in the OSHA world. where there are certain inspections that have to be done within a certain amount of time. Well, why is that important? Well, OSHA says so. Okay, then the conversation is over, right? The employer is going to look at the resume. Goodbye, right? We're going to go to the next one. So be very specific on not only the task, but how you do it. Also, when you are typing that up on your resume, do you think it would be something that's like a paragraph long, a one sentence long? Is there a rule to that?
Well, when it comes to accomplishments, I'm usually bullet pointing them out.
Bullet points, okay.
And it's usually a one sentence bullet point, or if we're elaborating a little bit more, I might break it up with a colon.
Gotcha.
But yeah, bullets.
Okay. That was the 10th question. A lot of people, I was surprised, chimed in right away. And I always tell this to applicants, very important. You have to do your homework on what your needs are and what the wants are. A job board or a posting is just going to have the basics. This is the job. This is what we're trying to fill. Make sure you know the requirements. Make sure that you're qualified for the position. It may be an entry-level position, but there might be some general requirements that you may have to meet. Depends on the employer and the position. So make sure that you do your homework. You don't want to send out hundreds of resumes for a very technical position that you maybe don't have the skill set for or the credentials for. Very important. Make sure you understand your work-life balance as well, especially with the hours. If you're looking only for a Monday through Friday 7 to 3, your position may require you to work a day on the weekend or rotating your schedule. So get yourself prepared for that next step, which would be the interview process. And maybe that'll be a future video that we'll put together. We'll talk about steps for the actual interview, because you got to get that resume done first. You got to get it done right with our friend Ron Reed. Make sure you check him out, www.readresumes.com. Ron, anything you want to close with?
Well, I just want to thank you for having me. This is a really awesome conversation, bringing my world together with your security background. I know with your extensive background, you have a lot of stories to tell that are relevant to the topic. So it's just really cool to chat with you. And to your point, we've been connected on LinkedIn for 10 years. And I don't know if you know this or not, but your sister, I think, is one of my first 5 or 10 clients ever.
Really? Wow.
And now I'm approaching like 1,800 clients or so over the last 7 years. Wow. So your sister, I think, is definitely at least in the top first 10 of my clients ever.
Amazing. Yeah. I'll let her know. She got out of New York. She did the escape from New York. She got married. She got out of here.
Oh, where's she living now?
She is in Hawaii. one island to another.
Wow, that's quite a change. Good for her.
Yeah, I mean, Long Island was great. She loved it. She did the Brooklyn thing for a while, and I think she said, you know what? I'm out of here.
Yeah, where are you guys originally from? Because when I connected with her, I think she was in West Babylon or Lindenhurst, but I know you're in Brooklyn. So where are you guys originally from?
Brooklyn, born and raised, Park Slope, Bay Ridge, Sunset Park, that area.
Okay.
She was in Long Island, Freeport area around there. After Sandy, things got a little crazy with everybody. Everybody just between my family there and then family at Staten Island, we just kind of like jumbled all over the place. But I'm back in Brooklyn and she's gone. She said, I'm out of New York.
I without exaggeration, at least half my clients these days hire me with the goal of getting a resume put together and landing a job off the island. Everybody's looking to get out of here.
So, one of the questions I was going to ask at the end, I have your website posted up. Your clients, do you look for anyone specific? Your applicants and everybody, do they have to come from Long Island? Do you do the 5 boroughs, Yonkers? What's your demographic?
So because I live on Long Island, I mean, the vast majority of my clients are on Long Island or in the boroughs. But I've worked with clients in almost all 50 states, including Hawaii. I've had clients in other countries as well. It's rare, but yeah, with the computer and a phone, I can work with a client anywhere on the planet. And And I work with clients from most backgrounds. The only clients I really don't work with are IT professionals. I just, I, you know, IT is just not my thing. I don't have the technical knowledge to write a really solid IT resume, but I do have partnerships with other resume writers who do
Sure.
specialize in IT resumes, so I refer those clients out to them. But for most other occupations, I can take those on. Um, and I work with everybody from college students up to CEOs and everything in between.
You heard it here, folks. The 5 boroughs to the 50 states. This man will help you. Make sure you check him out. Ron Reed's a really good guy. Yeah, it's funny because I know my sister reached out to you as well. I remember I had reached out to you when I was with a company years ago, just trying to network and figure out, like, who can I get people from. I had to hire like 1,000 people at one time for this big project, and you were so helpful. And I appreciate you jumping in tonight. I really, really do. Thank you. It's like we're having Sunday dinner. We're a family here on my channel.
We definitely have to do it again. This was really cool.
Absolutely. Folks, make sure you check out some of the other videos that I have posted up on the channel as well, talking about all things health and safety and fitness and fire safety and security, but very important, resume writing, job tips, things that you need to know. Hopefully, the stuff here that we talked about tonight can help you or help someone that you know. I'm Charlie Mack. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, do all the crazy things that you kids do on the YouTube today. Thank you very much, Ron. Appreciate it.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.